as the coordinator of SRS-TEFLIN. Now, before we directly jump to the presentation from our speakers today, I would like to remind you all to fill out the link for your participants' attendance, as it is become the basis for us to create your e-certificate later. That the e-certificate link will be shared in the end of our webinar today. All right, now without further ado, let's have the first presentation from our speaker today, Ibu Sary Silvhiany, Ph.D. But before she delivers her presentation, let me read you her short biography. All right. So Sary Silvhiany, Ph.D. is a lecturer at English Education, Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Sriwijaya University. She earned her Ph.D. from the Department of Literacy, Culture, and Language Education at Indiana University, Bloomington, and her master's degree from the University of Arizona, Tucson. Her research focuses on transnational and translingual literacies in transcultural spaces and critical pedagogies in teachers' education and professional development. She is currently co-editing a book entitled Learning to Research Multilingually, Rethinking Practices, Challenging Policies, under a contract with Multilingual Matter publisher. All right, that's all a short biodata about Ma'am Sary Silvhiany, Ph.D. Now, to Ibu Sary Silvhiany, please.
Thank you, moderator. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Welcome for those who just joined our webinar. In this first session of the webinar, I will discuss inequality and digital divide amidst school closure. So here's the plan for the presentation. I will begin with a brief overview of the current data on access to education and technology in Indonesian context. The next section will be about the impact of pandemic school closure in general. Then I will share some findings of the survey that I conducted with teachers in Indonesia. And the last part is the discussion and implication for education in the new normal. Okay, so the long-term developmental plan in Indonesia concerned with providing equal access to education with the aim at lessening the disparities in education level among the Indonesian population. Now let's take a look at the 2017 census data regarding school participation based on age, gender, and place of living. The disparities can be seen here. Male population and those living in the urban areas have more chance to receive formal education. The inequality is even more staggering when we compare the percentage of the population graduated with higher education based on the income level. So people in the lowest group, which is the first quartile, is less likely to have higher education level. Based on 2017 data, only 13.79% finished high school, and only 1.27% receive higher education degree. Now we're moving on to the access of technology. So I will focus on the ownership of mobile phones, since this is an important indicator whether a person is able to participate in a wider communication and education opportunity. So people in rural areas have less access to mobile phones. They also have different level of signal. So even though the urban area has like over 50% of access to mobile phones, but it might still be hindered by the connectivity in the areas where they live. This data is specifically about the access to the internet. So in 2017, 40.96% of people aged 5 until 4 had access to the internet. They mostly used the internet for participating in social media, getting news, accessing the entertainment service. The time spent on using the internet for school assignment is actually much less than the other three activities. Okay, now what about the use of internet based on the location? This is the top 10 user of the internet based on the provinces in Indonesia. So the highest percentage of young people using the internet lived in Jakarta, and other provinces not shown in this table. So this one we have only the top 10 of the access based on the provinces, and the rest of the, South Sumatra is not even in here. So those who are not in our chart means that they only have access less than 39%. Some are even in the below 30%. Van Dijk, the theory of digital divide, explained the cycles of relationship between social inequality and access to digital technologies. And then going back to the impact of unequal access of distribution of resources. We'll revisit this theory when we discuss what happened to our education in the era of pandemic. All right. So the novel COVID-19 pandemic has forced the government around the world to close school and university as an attempt to curb the spread of this virus. The school closures have impacted approximately 1.3 billion students and youth around the globe. After about a week of closure, some school resumes to teaching using different modes. And I'm sure many of us here experienced this kind of situation. Some schools in more wealthy countries and high-income school districts have already equipped their students with devices such as iPad and laptops. So the transition to online meeting is well supported. However, many of us in Indonesia are scrambled to find ways and resources to do emergency remote teaching. Okay. The shift to emergency remote teaching makes it more difficult to check on the students. Many students have gone missing. They did not attend the online meeting and they did not turn in their assignment. If students do not log in their e-learning platform, the teachers won't be able to track their participation in learning. The Northwest Education Assessment, or NWEA, predicted this situation would affect students' growth in various areas, particularly math and reading. The success of remote learning in this pandemic era is determined largely by families. Substantial disparities among families can be seen in three aspects. First, the amount of time available to devote to teaching, the access to technology tools, access to resources, parental education background, and other non-cognitive skills. This is the expansion of digital divide theory that is useful to understand the complexities of problems we face during the school closure. In the early theory, digital divide was concerned with the differences access of technology between the have and the have-nots. Taking this issue from a relational perspective, Van Dijk looks at the relative inequality between people and their position and resources. These are the five components of resources. Sometimes these are explained under other labels such as economic, social, and cultural capital. Parents and school with access to these 5 components will experience a better transition to remote teaching and learning. Okay, now I will shift gear to what I learned from the survey of teachers' practice during the COVID-19 pandemic school closure. This is an ongoing survey that I have conducted since the beginning of May, and so far has received over 100 participants. And I'm sure some of you have participated also in this survey, and I will share some of the data that I received until May 25th. According to these teachers who are mostly from urban areas, so their teaching setting are mostly in urban area. According to this teacher, not all students participated in every lesson. So only 26.19% of the teachers had all their students attended during the remote learning session. These teachers believe that the common reason students could not attend the class is because students did not have reliable internet service and not enough devices to share at home. Students who did not have their own device have to take turn with their siblings. So even though the ownership of mobile phones increased, not all students own their own smartphones. Oftentimes, they rely on their parents' phone and laptop to do their homework. Okay. When the remote teaching began, okay, let's see. So the next data is about teachers' practice. So the first one focusing on students. Now we focus on teacher. Before the pandemic closure, many of these teachers have used various kinds of technologies to support their teaching. So they use Google Classroom, quizzes, WhatsApp, and other usually free service. However, most common way is to ask students to find resources on the internet. The use of technology is not very systematic and structured. Okay. When the remote teaching began, some of the teacher continues using the technologies they used before, but also looked for various sources of teaching. From this data, teacher organization play important role in providing resources. Teacher turn to MGMP, TEFLIN, and TESOL to get resources they need to support their teaching. And they also access websites that provide teaching resources, such as Cambridge, teaching blogs, and many others. So what about institutional support? These teachers admitted that they were mostly left on their own to figure out how to navigate this new mode of teaching. Only about 20% having the access to technology supports they could contact when they had difficulties with the technology. The abrupt change to the mode of teaching and less supports and preparation might influence the teacher's perception about the effectiveness of their teaching. So over 45% said their teaching was moderately effective. So now, what are the implications? So we know that we are not really sure when we can go back to the usual interaction. So we keep waiting whether we can go back to the classroom as usual. So for me personally, while we are not very sure what this new teaching setting will be, as teachers, we just have to be one step ahead. So we start thinking about what it means to teach in the new normal. This is the buzzword that a lot of people are using, especially those in the policy stage. The implication, I think the first one regarding teacher education and professional development. It's very crucial to provide capacity training to teachers, particularly those teaching in the rural schools. And for all teachers to cultivate virtual teachers' personal learning network. So personal learning network has been an important part of teachers' professional development, but now we need to consider how we move it virtually so we can keep on our connection with other teachers. Also, it relates to enhancing the capacity of local teachers organization to support its members, particularly during the time of crisis. The next implication is providing effective remote learning. So these are some of the things that we can consider when we still doing the remote learning or teaching. First of all, ensuring equity at the center of remote learning. So we need to consider what access our students and families are having, so we can do the kind of teaching that involve all people from different socioeconomic background. The second one is communicating information and expectation clearly. Right now, teachers are, just keep going until we finish this academic year. Hopefully we can finish strong. But in the next stage, we should start thinking about the effective way of reaching out to family. So we will have to set expectations that are clear and also reasonable, so that students and parents knows the plan for teaching. And then the next one is designing instructional guidance that acknowledge the challenges and constraints on home-based remote learning. Next is focusing on active engagement or more student-centered activities instead of asking students to memorize a thing, but something that they can really do independently and given more flexibility. Using free quality resources that we can hopefully share also in our SRS-TEFLIN website. And then, and then responding to emotional toll of the student. So everybody experienced different things during this pandemic. Some of our students might have families who are sick, or families who are having some financial problem. So all of these things usually not really part of what we can control, but during this remote learning, this is something that we need to consider. So when we are missing our students, for example, there must be something that is not just technology issue, but there might be some emotional issue that they are experiencing that we need to pay attention to. And the last aspect is parental involvement. This is also something that is important, but during the face-to-face learning, teachers are still dominant, but now parents are a dominant aspect of learning that ensure the success of learning. So parents are at the forefront of education. Therefore, it should be an important part of the community. So teachers can establish regular communication with parents, particularly for students at the elementary and middle school level. And also we need to consider as an organization to also provide resources for parents. Okay, I think that's all what I can discuss today, and maybe we can have more discussion later on and question answer. So Nova, I think this is my section.
think you should unmute your
Already shared in the Zoom chat. I have already shared the link in your Zoom chat. You can click the link and then you can fill out your attendance list.